I'm not continuing in my Pat or Toss YouTube series. That is usually a series where I let you all know if a product that I'm reviewing is one that I would recommend that you pat on your skin or simply toss. But for today's video, I'm taking a break from reviewing products and I'm going to focus more on skincare itself and skincare habits. So today's video is going to be talking more about my skincare mistakes, what I've learned along the way, and what has helped me in getting my skin to that healthy base that I think it's at right now. Hey guys, so I'm just editing, look at my forehead. I'm just editing this video right now and I don't know what the camera did to my skin. I don't know what's going on, but this is what my skin looks like. I can't zoom in, but this is my skin. Okay, I don't know why the camera is making it look so bad, or well, not bad, but it looks different from what it looks like that I see on a consistent basis every single day. So I just wanted to pop in and drop that message and let you guys know that this is what my skin looks like. And yeah, we're not wearing a wig for this video, but yeah, so this is me and enjoy the video. So before we start, I'm just gonna say really quickly, usually throughout my talk throughs, I'm wearing makeup. Because we're talking about skincare habits and skin today, I am not wearing any makeup, so you're going to be seeing my bare face throughout the entire video. So if I look a little bit different, that's why. MAC isn't on my skin today. So it's just going to be au natural, except for the wig, but that's pretty much it. Please kindly consider liking this video, sharing, commenting, and as well as subscribing to my channel. I have a new video each week right here. So I've been on my skincare journey for, I would say maybe like a good, I've always done skincare my entire life, but as far as starting to take healthy steps in my skin, I think I've been on my skincare journey now for about 3 years, almost 3 years basically. So it's been pretty recent, all of this knowledge that I've basically acquired over time. And then the other stuff that I know was through trial and error. So like I said, I've been using skincare since I think I was like 11. So, you know, doing little face masks here and there and stuff like that. So that's been happening for quite some time. But as far as like diving into skincare, learning about skincare, it's been for the past 3 years, basically. So the first skincare habit that I picked up on was that I started to read ingredient lists. And with that, I started to educate myself on the ways of the skin. So I always talk about the Paula's Choice ingredient list on my channel. I think that is an incredible resource to go to. I started to read the labels of ingredients when I would buy different products, and then I noticed that what they were saying on the label of the product, sometimes I would not see happen on my skin. And so then I started to kind of say, okay, well, let me go into the ingredient list. Let me see if the ingredient backs up what the statement is saying, if the claim matches what their ingredient formulation is. And when I would read ingredient lists, I remember I would go into stores and I'd just be searching throughout Google like, oh, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And so then one time I stumbled upon the Paula's Choice ingredient list dictionary, and that changed my life. I wish they would make it into an app, to be honest with you, because it's so handy. You pull it up, it also shows you a ranking of poor, average, and good and best. And so you also kind of have like that guidance when you're starting out to understand what different ingredients mean. And then with me understanding ingredients, understanding what they mean, it then helped me to also understand how they work for your skin. So things like antioxidants, what do they do for the skin? Things like astringents, what do they do for the skin? Things like, you know, chemical acids and all those things, what do they do for the skin? And when you understand what those ingredients are meant for, and when you understand how they're supposed to work with your skin and how the skin naturally works and occurs basically, it really helps you to shape and build a healthy routine. And so that was my first step that I started to do, was I stopped just buying products based on how pretty they looked or the claims that was being made, and I started to actually look at the ingredients. And it's an extra step, of course. No one wants to go ahead and look at all the ingredients, but I've noticed from doing that I see different ingredients now and I instantly know what they mean. I haven't had as many unfortunate occurrences with my skin since I started to read the ingredients list as well. So that was my first skincare habit that I picked up. The second thing that I started to do was the second thing that I did was I stopped just buying any old face wash for my skin. Before I really understood skincare, understood your skin's pH, understood skin cell turnover, things like that, I would just use anything to cleanse my skin. I've used Dawn liquid dish soap to wash my skin. I've done that. I've used things like the Dove body soap. I've used that on my face. I used to use witch hazel, which we're going to get into in a second. I used to use witch hazel to cleanse my skin as well because I thought that was a great skin cleanser. So I used to just kind of use whatever on my skin because my thought process was just, oh, I'm just going to wash my skin, blah, blah, blah. So I would just use whatever I used on my body, on my face. I would use whatever I use on my hands, on my face. So that was kind of my mental thinking was I didn't really understand that your skin and then your body care sometimes have to be separate. So that was one thing that I realized, and so I invested in a good facial cleanser. And through trial and error, I found really great facial cleansers that worked for my skin. And then those also helped me to identify my skin type as well. Because when I noticed that the cleansers that were working for my skin worked for my skin because then they were for oily skin, I began to kind of understand more about what my skin wanted, what my skin needed. So the second thing that I can tell you that I did was I really stopped just using whatever thing I could use on my face to cleanse it, and I invested in proper facial cleansers. And when I say invested, I don't mean that I spent like a lot of money. I mean, I just invested the time and, you know, through trial and error. And then I invested the time as well to research what facial cleansers are and what they're meant to do for the skin. So that's what I mean by an investment. The third thing that I did for my skincare routine is I made sure that I introduced consistent daily use of sunscreen into my routine. Not using sunscreen, quite frankly, I think was one of the worst things that I did for my skin. And it stemmed from the idea that I thought that Black people did not need to wear sunscreen. There's a general thought process, a general rule that, you know, Black people don't need sunscreen, you can't be burnt in the sun, which has a lot of ties as well to enslavement days, which is why people think like, oh, we can't be burnt in the sun because we're out there and we're fine. But the truth is that every Black person, every person in the world needs to be wearing sunscreen. The sun does not recognize color, you know what I mean? So it will burn you regardless and it will hurt you over time. Whether you see the effects or you don't, your skin will react to you. And so the benefits of using sunscreen is it helps with fine lines with wrinkles. Sunscreen, of course, helps to protect from the rays as well. Sunscreen also helps to reduce certain forms of cancer in the skin as well. So, and then sunscreen is really great if you're suffering from like hyperpigmentation, uneven skin tone. It's really great to help to balance that out for the skin as well. So sunscreen has a lot of great properties. It's really fantastic for the skin. They have different kinds of sunscreen as well. So if you feel like one type doesn't work for you, you have other options. So introducing the daily consistent use of sunscreen was incredible for my skin. And when I say daily, I mean daily. Like even if there's no sun outside, even if I'm staying inside in the house, the fact that I have windows everywhere, I'm wearing sunscreen because even any type of ray coming onto my skin definitely can lead to damaging effects. So I love to wear sunscreen all the time. There are a lot of great options for sunscreen. I think my favorite sunscreen though that I would ever recommend to anyone is the Supergoop one, Play Every Day with the sunflower extract. You know, that I think like they really nailed it with that one. I love that sunscreen a lot, and that's one that I would recommend to anybody who's looking to kind of get a starting with sunscreen. And it's also great as well because it does not have any white cast on it. So for my type of skin tone, for darker skin tones, it works really well for you, and it settles great under makeup as well. So you want to introduce that daily consistent use of sunscreen. You don't want to slip up on that. And then also reapplying it every 4 hours is really, reapplying it every 2 hours. Every 2 to 4 hours. I think it's both. It's every 2 or every 4 hours is what I've read, depending on how intensely you're out there in the sun. The next thing that I did for my skin was I reduced my use of physical scrubs. So in the skincare world, the apricot scrub from a certain brand that I will not name is pretty infamous because many people will tell you that that is like the worst thing that you can do to your skin. Before diving a little bit more into the skincare community, I was using that scrub every single day. And my thought process was that my skin was so oily that I needed to use a scrub to kind of help to limit the amount of oil that was being produced. And I'm gonna get more into that in a second when I talk about witch hazel. So I was using the scrub every single day, and I would be using it morning and night, and it was awful for my skin. And whether you use that scrub, whether you use any kind of physical scrub, you have to be gentle with how much you're putting on your skin. For myself right now, I still use physical scrubs, but I use it maximum once a week. I do not go over once a week because I just feel like after that, the skin just starts to like scream at you a little bit. So go fix that wig, girl. So for me, I don't like to go over once a week. So when I was using the apricot scrub or any kind of physical scrub really consistently every single day, my skin started to kind of break on itself, and I was starting to see a lot of sensitivity issues. I was starting to see more hyperpigmentation because the skin was very aggravated. I also actually started to get a little bit more acne in certain areas of my skin as well. So my skin was just reacting horribly, and I just kept using it because I was like, oh, it has to, maybe this isn't working, it's working. So I really kind of calmed down on things like that, and I reduced my use of the physical scrubs, and I just kind of let myself, now I let my skin work once a week for the physical scrubs, and then no more than 3 times a week I use a chemical exfoliant, and currently I'm using the Polish Choice 2% BHA. So yeah. So next for my skin, I ditched skincare tools. I would say that's one of my greatest benefits for my skin, was because I noticed that even when I would wash my skincare tools, just upon reusing them, they just didn't feel as clean or as strong, I guess, as they were the first time. And then I felt like I was just aggravating my skin each time I used a skincare tool. And it didn't really make sense to use like the spinner brush on my skin when I could just use my hands. So for my skincare routine, once I stopped using skincare tools, I noticed that my skin's texture incredibly improved. And so this is just a texture thing. So I stopped using all of those spin brushes. I stopped using harsh towels to dry my skin. Not harsh towels, what's it called? There's a name for it and I'm like forgetting it. It's a certain cloth. Kourtney Kardashian used it in her Vogue thing. Muslin cloth, yes. So I would use a muslin cloth, and I would actually use it rather aggressively. So I stopped using those because they are like an exfoliating cloth as well. So again, I was trying to exfoliate my skin too much, and I was using that with the scrubs and geez. So yeah, so the muslin cloth, I stopped using that to dry my skin each time I cleansed it. And I just let my hands do the talking, I let the air do the walking. And I noticed that my skin's texture incredibly improved over time. Your hands are your best friends. I use my hands for my toners, my essences, for my application throughout my skincare routine. You really don't need skincare tools. If you're somebody who wants to use them, like please don't let this video tell you not to, but it's just so you know that they're not necessary. But I guess I can also say that to myself because I use an essence and a toner, and somebody could look at me and say that's a bit much. So like I said, it depends on your skincare needs and wants. So let that be up to you. But for myself, I noticed an improvement in my skin's texture when I stopped using skincare tools. And well, I can still use something like a jade roller. That's different, I would say. I would use a jade roller like maybe once a week, to be honest with you. But what I'm talking about are those daily tools like the spin brushes to cleanse your skin. The tools that you use at like every step of your routine and that they are consistently used. That's kind of what I'm talking about. I stopped using those. So the final thing that I did for my skin is kind of like a 2-in-1. The first thing was that I stopped telling myself that because I had oily skin, it meant that I didn't need hydration and moisture. And that then tied into me stopping my use of witch hazel. So witch hazel is, who is witch hazel? Witch hazel is that friend that just really wants to do good for the world. What the hell is that?
Witch hazel is that friend who just really wants to do good for the world, but just keeps kind of messing up, and she really doesn't want to. That is who witch hazel is to me. Before I talk about witch hazel, I'm going to use some resources. I looked up some research through Paula's Choice and from other websites as well, like Allure. You might not like it if you are a fan of witch hazel. Please do not take what I'm saying as something that you have to do. This is simply what happened for my skin. So witch hazel is processed leaves, bark, and twigs from the Hamamelis virginiana. This is the worst pronunciation of this plant ever in history. But that is where witch hazel comes from. And so Paula's Choice says witch hazel is an antioxidant, which antioxidants are incredible for the skin, but unfortunately, as part of the antioxidant family, witch hazel has something called tannins. And so unfortunately with tannins have a drying effect on the skin. And this is kind of where the negative effect of witch hazel comes from for people who use it, or who use it too consistently, I would say. So that would fall under my category, because like I mentioned earlier, I would use witch hazel to cleanse my skin. I would use witch hazel to remove makeup. I would use witch hazel before I applied makeup. I would use witch hazel as a toner. And so that kind of overuse of the product became a problem, and I'll keep explaining as to why. Paula's Choice says that witch hazel typically will have between 8 to 12% of tannins. So with tannins having a drying effect, and then witch hazel containing 8 to 12% of those tannins, it becomes a problem if you're using it too much like I was using it. Then the next step is that Paula's Choice says, and I'll quote, "Applied to skin, tannins have a constricting and drying effect. They compress proteins in skin, creating an invisible film that can, to a minor degree, temporarily degrease skin and minimize the look of enlarged pores." So because of that, because witch hazel, when I would apply it, I wouldn't see my pores, I wouldn't have as much oil production. I started to use it a bit too much. I kind of got carried away with it. And the witch hazel that I was using was the Dickinson's one, which is, I think, my favorite brand of the witch hazel, which is why I stuck to it. It just did not sting my skin as much. It also felt more balancing on the skin, if that makes any sense, compared to the other ones. It just felt like it worked overall with my skincare routine at the time. So part of the problem, as I mentioned, was the tannins. Then part of the problem was the fact that the witch hazel, when you put it on your skin, it instantly kind of mattified the skin, which is the look I was going for. So I started to use it too much. Then the other issue is that witch hazel is distilled with alcohol. So witch hazel is distilled with alcohol, and Paula's Choice says that the alcohol is about 14 to 15% within the witch hazel. That's the extract for the alcohol. So my skin basically was oily. I was producing so much oil on my skin, and so I kind of felt in my mental process like, okay, I'm producing a lot of oil right now. That means that I have to limit the amount of oil that's on my skin. So I started to use witch hazel. I started to use the apricot scrub. I started to use anything that I could use that would stop the oil. I even at some points wouldn't even use moisturizer. And I remember I would have such a hard time finding the perfect foundation for my skin, because any foundation I used, my skin would just break down and it'd be so oily. And so what I actually went on to realize was the fact that it's because I was limiting the oil, so my sebum was like all over the place. It was out of whack. So what I started to do was I started to introduce hydrating products into my skincare routine, and then I would seal them in with a moisturizing product. Hydrating products are like your humectants. You have hyaluronic acid, niacinamide, have hydrating effects. Then your moisturizing products are your moisturizing. And so the mentality that I then basically adopted was that with my skin, I'm gonna focus on balancing it out. I started to use hydrating products, moisturizing products. I started to use antioxidants on my skin, products that were great for hyperpigmentation and even skin tone. So I started to do all those things, and I made sure to then top it all off with sunscreen. And the most important part of it all was that with any product that I bought, I went ahead and I referred to the ingredient list to make sure that whatever product I was buying matched up with the claim that the product itself said. And so in doing this and following these rules, my skin started to work for me and it became more balanced, it became healthy. It got back a natural glow that I saw it have before I kind of messed it up. So all those things worked for me. Let me know down below what your skincare habits are that you picked up. What are some things that you learned along the way? What are some things that you will never ever use today? And just let me know overall how your skin's been doing. Let's have a little skin check down below. So that's all I have to say today. These are my skincare habits. Thank you all so much for watching. Please consider liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing to my channel. And I'll have a new video for you all each week right here. Thank you all so much for watching today. Bye!